welcome to your favorite bookish podcast, Fully Booked and Caffeinated. I'm Heather.
I'm Kelsey.
And on today's episode, we will be discussing This Book Will Bury Me by Ashley Winstead. I pulled this exactly from the Google. It said, the chilling, compulsive story of 5 amateur sleuths whose hunt for an elusive killer catapults them into danger as the world watches.
That's accurate. Okay.
All right.
I mean, it's only a part of the story, but it's accurate.
I was like, oh, okay, this is fun. Anyways, what is your fuel?
Oh, right now I have a cherry Coke.
Love it.
But I did get your Dunkin' creation.
How was it?
Delicious.
Right? I got it this morning too.
And I got it from the Dunkin' that's like, can go either way. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's not. And I feel like it's a way to guarantee that it has enough flavor in there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's
delicious. Why I know. I like it. I did get it this morning. It was a little, I think they put too much vanilla actually in this one, but it was still delicious.
Yeah, because the vanilla, since it's the sugar-free, too much of it and it tastes like...
Yeah, I had kind of like a bad aftertaste
artificial, exactly,
for a little bit.
Yeah.
But then eventually like it wears off, so when it gets watered down, so it was fine. But I'm glad you liked it. I told you. It was good.
But it was making me think I want to have the blueberry one again.
Yeah, I've still been doing that one too.
I haven't had that in a while.
Mm-hmm. That one's also good. I made a reckless decision and got Starbucks at 6:30 tonight, so we'll see how this goes.
Okay. Okay.
I don't know. I was on my way home and I'm like, I deserve a little treat. I've been up since 6 a.m.
You do deserve a little treat.
I'm gonna get a white chocolate mocha. And then I got Eric the strawberry acai lemonade refresher. I asked for the new one, the summer berry, and I did not get that. And I was like, I'm not going to have them fix it. It's fine. He also likes this one because the new summer one is out and it has like the raspberry bursting pearls in it.
Oh, that sounds good.
Yeah, they had it last summer. And I think the summer before. Eric didn't really care for like the pearls, but I think he liked the flavor of the drink.
Okay.
So I'll try again. But yeah. So we'll see how I cope with sleep.
How you function. All right. We got this.
So we already did an Ashley Winstead episode, so I don't need to necessarily cover her bio. And I meant to write down what episode it was, and now I did not. So go me. But we covered In My Dreams, I Hold a Knife, which I really enjoyed. That was my first Ashley Winstead novel.
It was episode 18.
18.
Way back. Actually, it was June of 2023. Oh, so it's exactly 2 years ago.
We're doing her in June again.
Wow, we didn't even do that on purpose.
That was not intentional. That's funny. Oh, wow. But yeah,
so go back and listen to that one. And if you haven't listened to Ashley Winstead, that is a good one to start with, I think.
Honestly, yeah, because that one was, I really, really, well, I just love like the dark academia novels. So that one was really good.
And we had a big crush on the guy, one of the main guys, Cooper.
Oh, Gus was Beach Read.
I did not remember that.
Yeah, I think his name was August. His name was August, right? But they call him Gus. Yeah, Coop. Why did I think it was Gus? I don't know.
Coop. Yeah. Okay.
I just pull things from my mind. Anyways, so, but we like Ashley Winstead. And she writes the romances. She hasn't written romances in a while, but she has the 2. And she does have, I remember we talked about this at book club. She actually is in the middle of her next novel, which is a thriller. Because I have it as marked as want to read on my Goodreads. And it comes out, I think, like next year. I think it's called like Future Saints.
Okay.
If I recall correctly. So I'm assuming it's going to be a thriller because she seems to be pushing out the thrillers.
I mean, who can blame her?
Yeah, I know, honestly. All right, our book description. As you know, it's about 5 amateur sleuths. It's the most famous crime in modern history, but only she knows the true story. After the unexpected death of her father, college student Jane Sharp longs for a distraction from her grief. She becomes obsessed with true crime, befriending armchair detectives who teach her how to hunt killers from afar. In this morbid internet underground, Jane finds friendship, purpose, and even glory. So when news of the shocking deaths of 3 college girls in Delphine, Idaho takes the world by storm, and sleuths everywhere race to solve the crimes, Jane and her friends are determined to beat them. But the case turns out to be stranger than anyone expected. Details don't add up, the police are cagey, and there seems to be more media hype and internet theorizing than actual evidence. When Jane and her sleuths take a step closer, they find that every answer only begs more questions. Something's not adding up, and they begin to suspect their killer may be smarter and more prolific than any they've faced before. They faced like one other one before this, but okay. Placing themselves in the center of the story starts to feel more and more like walking into a trap. Told 1 year after the astounding events that concluded the case and left the world reeling, when Jane has finally decided to break her silence about what really happened, she tells the true story of the Delphine massacres. And what she has to confess will shock even the most seasoned true crime fans.
Okay. Why'd they make it sound like an action movie?
Right?
That was a little dramatic.
I mean, know.
It's accurate, but it's a little dramatic.
I know. And also, they said adding up twice in the description. Because I said it, and then I said it again. I was like, I definitely just said this. And I thought I like somehow skipped. But I was like, oh no, they actually have, because it says details don't add up, and then something's not adding up.
And in the end, it all adds up. So go figure. Also, what was that last part where it's like tells a tale that no one could have known? Everyone knows what happened. She's just telling her side of it.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know.
All right.
We're not here to review the summary.
Well, now I just did. Now I have problems. The book begins from Jane's POV, and it's basically told from her POV for the entirety of the novel. And it begins with her being at a college party for 5 seconds. This is the only time we ever experience her in college, literally 5 seconds. And her father unexpectedly dies. So she comes home to Florida.
Yikes.
And while deep in her grief, a news story comes on the television about a dead body found in a trash bag in Lake Okeechobee?
Okeechobee, yep.
Okeechobee, great, Florida. I was like, I did not try to pronounce that. I didn't learn. Jane falls down a rabbit hole, Google search, and stumbles upon a murder-solving sleuth forum, which sounds fun, actually.
Mm-hmm.
I would like to just find myself like in a sleuth forum, but I feel like it's probably a hot mess city in there.
Oh, yeah. It's like when you accidentally stumble into the wrong space on Reddit.
Yeah, I know. She ends up creating an account and offers to help the sleuths on the case by going to a convenience store to ask for CCTV footage. This girl, who has never done any... She's like... Wait, we talked about this. She's like 22, 23.
Yeah, I think 23.
We determined that she's in her young 20s. She's never been into any kind of true crime as far as we're concerned. And she just is like, I'm in Florida. I'll just casually go to this convenience store and ask for their CCTV footage.
And she's like, oh, I didn't really think about what I was going to say.
Yeah. Uh-huh. And she failed to get it, obviously. Because who is going to just give CCTV footage to some hoodlum off the street? And she told the forum, and they explained that they tip off the police and work in tandem with them. The autopsy revealed that Indira, the woman who was murdered, was alive when she was dismembered.
Yikes.
Mm-hmm. More digging discovered that Indira won the $75,000 from Publishers Clearinghouse.
Is this a real thing?
I totally forgot about this. This opened up a whole, nugget in my brain.
Yeah. Does it still exist?
I have no idea. I probably should have done a little research on that, but I did not.
There's too much to get to, honestly.
I know. So it turns out that her boss, Greg Brownville, and his girlfriend or lady friend, Sheila Watson, murdered her for the money. Because, oh gosh, I can't remember because I finished this book 2 weeks ago. But I think Greg had
he was a gambler.
Gambler debt, right? That's what I thought.
Had those pictures of him gambling on Facebook.
Oh yeah, that's right, in the casino. And then that's right, because then she was sleuthing and looking at his social media.
And his girlfriend just happened to look exactly like the woman who was murdered.
Which is how, again, can you just tell me how someone can just go into a bank and get $75,000 in cash and just walk out with it?
Yeah, that doesn't work.
There was no deposit into a bank account. The lady went to the bank to cash the check and then just left with $75,000.
Basically walked away with a duffel bag full of singles or
My
something.
mom works at a bank and they don't carry that much cash.
No.
Bank.
And they're certainly going to be calling you into a special room before they're giving you that much of cash.
You're also not going to really check her ID and make sure that it matches up.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that one was a little kind of not really believable.
Yeah, I feel like the whole thing with that guy wasn't.
Yeah.
But it served its purpose of kind of giving us how she got into the sleuthing.
Yeah. So once this murder is solved, Jane is invited to join a smaller private chat with George Lightly, Citizen Knight, Sleuth Mistress, and Lord Goku. These were all their usernames. And her name, you would think that I would write it down, but it was like Searcher. Yeah, no, hers was Searcher. So George Lightly is a retired police chief in Chicago. Right, I think.
Sure.
Citizen Knight is was he in the Marines? I know he was on a Navy base, but I don't know if he was in the Marines. Yeah, but now I can't remember. But he is a Army officer of some sort. Sleuth Mistress is like a woman in her 60s who everyone loves. She can get any cop to cooperate and just give her all the tea. Like, love that. And Lord Goku, who is just like this random dude who lives in the basement of a house that he actually owns, but lets his parents live there. And he's just kind of like, I guess you would consider him like a recluse. He doesn't really he doesn't really seem to have any friends or anything. He just kind of like hangs out in his basement, but he's also like a hacker and works for like Amazon.
And he makes a shit ton of money.
Yeah. So Jane has her first video call with the members and immediately attracted to Citizen, aka Peter Bishop. Like, her heart is pitter-pattering. They agree to do an interview.
Honestly, if you think about it, she's got this guy who doesn't even have the lights on. He just works in the dark. She's got a 60-year-old woman. She's got this old retired cop. Of course, he's going to look hot by comparison.
No.
Unfair advantage.
I know. They agree to do an interview with Newsline about sleuthing. So, and then this kind of like sets off this cannonball effect in the forum where everyone is like, what makes these guys so special? And they're taking all the credit for solving the Indira murder in Florida. And everyone is big mad about it. But they're like, it's fine. Like, we're the face of the murder forum now. There's a mass killing of 3 girls in Delphine, Idaho. Now, this case, and like I think Ashley Winstead says it, this is supposed to mirror, or was based off of / got inspiration from, which is terrible to say, the murders. It was in Idaho too, right? The college murders of like the 3 girls and one boy.
I think it was Delphine?
Was it actually Delphine as well?
Delphi, no. Oh. No, the Delphi murders are something different. She took the name from that.
Oh, okay. I remember the Delphi. That was the 2 girls, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
This is called the University of Idaho Massacre.
Oh, okay. So she took that and then kind of created her own story based off of it. So the High Five agree to try and solve the case together. And information comes out that one of the girls, Larissa, was sleeping with a professor. And then one of the suspects, who was a boyfriend or not really boyfriend, like kind of like on off of also Larissa, is just, he becomes a suspect. And everyone is attacking him and putting all this stuff out on the internet. And he ends up getting like brutally beaten and is just hanging on for his life. He just basically put into a medically induced coma, and he obviously had nothing to do, we find out, like, with these murders. So it's just kind of insane that because you put something on the internet, people become very vigilante-like.
Mm-hmm.
And they just took this kid out. The chief of police in Delphine holds a press conference to call out the 5 sleuths and paints them in a bad picture, basically saying that this is your fault that this guy got beaten.
I was shook that he put their pictures on the news as if they were mugshots.
Yeah.
And said their names, where they're from. I'm like, I don't think the police are allowed to dox people.
No, I don't think so either.
But they did.
So Hiddison. Hot citizen, Hiddison. Oh, God.
No.
Citizen hacks the DPD server and gets the Queen Lace, which is the name of the street that the house was on, file, which uncovered that the 4th roommate, Harlow, and her friend, who was like a forensic major, end up like moving the bodies and just completely contaminating the scene, and didn't indicate that they were murdered when the cops called. They're just like, something happened.
Like, send an ambulance.
Something happened.
Yeah.
So this entire thing is just sus from like the get. And the cops trudged all over the scene, and there were emails from Harlow to friends saying she hated her roommates. The cops just like screw this up from like the beginning, which I guess this seems like a small town, and that this is kind of way above any of their pay grades / experience.
They've like never had a homicide before.
No, and like the chief of police in this town is just really not doing a good job whatsoever.
I did hate the whole narrative about how before it was revealed that they had like already screwed everything up, that they're like, oh, he already lost the case and lost the public's view and opinion because he cried on TV.
Yeah.
And they made it into this whole like toxic masculinity thing.
Yeah. So once this information is hacked, Jane kind of becomes the deciding factor of whether or not they're going to release this information to the public. So this is not public known knowledge. This is just something that they ended up discovering on the server. And they're definitely, Lightly and Mistress are like, no, it's not a good idea. And Citizen and Goku, who had kind of brought Jane into a private chat prior to this and was like basically persuading her decision and saying, well, it's really important that we do this. And so she ends up saying like, okay, sure. And so they release the information. One of the girls' parents goes on the Today Show to slight the chief and ask the sleuths to help solve their daughter's murder. And Lightly is just like over it. He's like, because he was obviously a police professional in the past, so he like realizes that this isn't like a good look, and it's not gonna be helpful in the long run. So,
and look what happened to the boyfriend. He's almost got killed because of it.
Exactly.
And now they're just going to start throwing out more suspects without knowing anything.
Yep. So Lightly quits the group. And then 5 minutes go by in the book. And a second murder spree at the college happens again. And Lightly asks back in. And the reasoning for that is because one of the girls that was murdered in the second murder spree was she was a person of color. And so, George Lightly is a black man, and he has a lot of unresolved issues in his past work with feeling like, which is what happens all the time, that people of color, their representation during any kind of crime is never as widely spread as a blonde white girl. So he's like, well, which I don't love that this is like what it had to be. Like, oh, he wants back in just because like a black girl was killed. I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Didn't love that connotation at all.
Yeah. So he has a buddy in the FBI who owed him a favor, and he has crime scene photos. And the FBI. Oh my God.
That's a new association.
The FBI agent commissions the sleuths to help solve the case. And this is another far-fetched thing, but we'll roll with it. Jane saw an eyelash on a, zoomed in photo on one of the girl's body, which don't know how you can just determine that's an eyelash.
Also,
Could be like
how
a speck
good
of
is the
dirt.
technology on these crime scene photos?
Yeah, I know. So the evidence from the eyelash actually traces back to an old cold case for a girl whose name I forget her first name, but her last name is Howell. So
I
I'm
thought it was Bridget.
really good at taking notes. Begin with a B, I thought.
I thought it was Bridget, but I could be wrong.
You might be right, actually. I think it is Bridget Howell. I think that's correct.
We're going with it. Anyone who's listening might be screaming at their...
And it's fine. That's on me. So the gang is like, you know what? Let's take a road trip. Let's all leave our normal lives and head to Idaho to solve a case, because now there's just so many mysteries. There's the Queen Lace murders, there's the second murder spree, and there's a cold case. Like, they got their hands full.
Uh-huh.
So they're like, let's do it. So they end up going to, which is like crazy. They all just go to the Howells' home. And because, again, there was like crime scene photos, and Jane, who has never sleuthed in her life, is just now a police detective. And she saw a lock like on the back of the back door. And she was like, well, there was a hack back then that if you press 7 0 times, which is this true? Because that's crazy as well. That people could just break into someone's lockbox.
I was thinking that, and I was like, I should probably try that on my like numeric lock, but I'm nervous.
So she was like, oh, well, if we can break in, because if you can press 0 7 times, the lock will release and we can enter the home. And of course that's what happens. So go Jane.
Yeah.
She's sleuth of the year.
Biggest thing is that there's no DNA left behind at any of these the new crime scenes.
Yes. Very clean crime scenes.
And the crazy part to me is that the MO on this cold case is completely different. Mm-hmm. And the only thing they have matching is this eyelash DNA. And just the fact of like the only thing they're missing is that there was no forced entry.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's a stretch, but we're here. We're going with it.
We're rolling with it. We have to. When they're back in Idaho, Jane runs into one of the murdered girl's mom and goes home with her. Because she tells the mom that she was friends with Natalie or Stacy, and her mom just is obsessed with anyone that knew her daughter, which I understand that. I think that that's probably a very common grieving mechanism for mothers, especially because they want to take whatever they can get from anybody that has memories.
Especially when their child is that age, too. Because I feel like when a girl is a teenager or her early 20s, her whole personality is like people she surrounds herself with.
Yeah. So throughout the book, which we'll talk about this a little later, there are footnotes. And in these footnotes, you get this connotation from Jane where she will not release she's basically pulling like a Voldemort, and she's like, she who not be named, that wrote like a really disparaging book about Jane and like the sleuthing world and everything. So she just keeps saying, I'm not gonna say who it is, so us as the reader have to wait for like the big reveal. And the big reveal was very disappointing, because I didn't even care. The big reveal was that it was Natalie Flowers, who is Stacy's sister, who was pissed because Jane faked being Stacy's friend, and which I think that's fair to be pissed about. Like, you have the stranger infiltrating your home who's there kind of for like not necessarily nefarious reasons, but kind of, she's invading on your privacy.
Lying
to
a grieving mother, but also Jane should have been arrested for this. Like,
there's a lot that they should be arrested
diabolical.
for.
And she's given, like, FBI clearance into this
I know.
whole thing. That's diabolical.
It's crazy.
If I was Natalie, I would have beat her ass.
Yeah, so that's just one of the many things. And then there's like this little scene where Jane and Citizen go to a college bar because now they're going to try to infiltrate like the college. And Citizen admits that he has a crush on her, and they smooch. They have a little smooch.
A little smoochy smooch.
Yeah, and Citizen's like, "You've been drinking. We can't take this any further." Which, all right, I'll give him that. That's the only respect he'll get from me. So then Jane pretends to rush at the sorority that the girls that were murdered were part of, and she meets another sorority sister, Riley, who is convinced that the house mom, Lizzie, is the murderer. So now she's kind of putting these ideas into Jane's head to look into Lizzie, who is, okay, I'm not gonna lie to you, I was envisioning her as Regina George's mom in Mean Girls.
100%.
Because that's just exactly how she was, like, presented. And I also didn't know how fucking old she was. I couldn't, like, I think they mention it. She's not super old, but, like, the way that they made it, I guess because they call her the house mom, I immediately think of, like, an older woman. But she was creepy. Yeah.
Just, like, so desperate to be liked and to be included with the sorority girls. It just was so pathetic and sad.
Yeah, and then Jane ends up finding out that, like, Lizzie was obsessed with Harlow and, like, the girls of the sorority, but, like, Harlow was her, like, main obsession. And so here's good old Jane just sleuthing about. She just breaks into, like, Lizzie's room. But then, like, finds a shrine to Harlow. And also, like, takes her shoe measurement because there was a size shoe that was found at the crime scene. The only thing that they had. Oh my god, this was, like, another hot mess that I'm just like, again, you have this girl, this young girl, who's just doing all these things that are definitely out of the norm for her. And she's not even hesitating. She's just diving headfirst.
And also, the amount of crimes in this book that are solved on Facebook is so upsetting. But you're going to tell me that Jane is the only person who looked at these people's Facebooks? Because she saw that all of Lizzie's pictures were, like, candids of the girls that she was not included in. She just, like, took from afar.
Well, she also just took them from other girls' social media and then just posted them on her Facebook. Like, that's,
and pretended
like, creepy.
Like she was there when they were taken, even if she wasn't.
So Jane is definitely on the vibe that it's Lizzie who's a murderer. But Citizen and Goku have a lead on a male TA named Odell Rhodes. And so they're convinced that it was Odell who killed the girls. And Jane and Lightly are like, you know what? I think it's two killers, because Lightly's a smart police detective and knows what he's doing. And so, like, he talks to Jane about it, and he's like, I'm pretty sure there's two killers. But then before they can really dive further into this theory, Citizen and Goku come in, knights in shining armor. They get Odell on tape confessing to the murders. So now is, like, where the book really just fucking escalates. And a lot of people have said this, and I completely agree. This book was way too long. Like, way too long. So now, like, we're at least, like, 70% in, and now we're gonna get to, like, the good stuff. So in this 24-hour period, so you have Jane and Lightly, who are like, it's two killers. And then all of a sudden, Citizen and Goku are like, Odell did it. We got him on tape. Mistress goes missing. Jane breaks into her room and sees that Mistress was suspicious of Citizen. So now it's like, now we're just being thrown into all these loops. Lightly and Jane go to Oregon, and they get the yearbooks, only to find Peter Bishop went to school with Bridget Howell. This is, like, the master reveal of the book. And Susan tells, I believes Susan was a friend of the murdered girl.
Mm-hmm.
And she tells Jane, and she had told Mistress previously, because Mistress put 2 and 2 together, and she went to Oregon by herself to try to like figure out what was going on.
Yeah,
and
once again, Mistress was 10 steps ahead of everyone.
I know. And they had explained that there was this boy who hung around, and Bridget, her name is Bridget, it's in my notes, there we go.
Mm-hmm. I looked it up, it is Bridget.
And Bridget thought that Peter killed her dog. And then when Jane shows Susan the picture of Peter in the yearbook, Susan confirms that, yeah, that is the kid that was hanging around. So now it's just a mess. Mistress is missing. We find out that Citizen is not who they think he is. And
meanwhile, Citizen and Goku are these big heroes, and no one, which it's so crazy. All the cops are listening to this recording they have of Odell confessing, and Jane is like, excuse me, Mr. FBI man, I know that you're listening to this very important recording, but can I talk to you?
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, no. And she's like, no, really, it's an emergency. He's like, okay, sure, no problem. And then he's like, actually, that recording is bullshit, and there's 2 other killers.
Yeah.
And the FBI guy is like,
yeah, you're completely right. Like, it turns into pure chaos. So then,
there's not a single skilled person in this goddamn police force or the FBI.
I know. So it comes out that Lightly had been trying to email the chief of police in Oregon, and he was saying, Lightly's like, you haven't like responded to my emails. And Chief is like, no, I have. And then they find out that obviously Peter was stopping the emails because he's like also very smart and good with all that shit. And so we find out that Peter was one of the suspects in the Bridget Howell murder, but he had an alibi. So they're like, well, then it couldn't have been him. He had an alibi. So they go and meet up with Cooter, the ROTC guy that was his alibi.
I just love his name.
That his name was Cooter. And he admits that he was actually not with Peter that day. So we're just whiplashing. We're just getting fucking swung around. Like, what's up and what's down, who knows in this book. But he admits that he was not with Peter. He was actually drunk in his car. And he didn't want to get in trouble for being drunk in his car when he was supposed to be looking after minors. So, yeah. And now he can get that off his conscience and, I guess, die. Because he, was very much showing that he was an alcoholic.
Yeah, he, hacked up a lung while they're sitting there. But also, he's like, oh, what a relief that I can stop lying about this. Bro, you are way too late. Someone literally died. No one gives a fuck if you were drunk.
But I guess, yay, finally solved. The cold case is finally solved. So again, it just kind of is like pure chaos. The Lightly and Jane go back to the house that they had, the Airbnb that they were staying at. And then very quickly, we get a raid at the house. So there's a moment where Goku comes in by himself to the house, and he's searching for Lightly and Jane because they had just kind of disappeared off the face of the earth. And then within 5 seconds of him being in the house, the FBI just fucking raids the entire house and then puts everyone in handcuffs.
And it's slamming everyone around.
Yeah, slamming Jane around, throwing her in a car, and then the FBI agent that Lightly knew had to be no, she's with me. But also I'm shouldn't they know that she's a part of this? I didn't get this. This scene I didn't get. I didn't understand why they were being so aggressive with her. And then when they knew that they weren't a part of it, that it was Goku and Peter that needed to be.
Yeah, because either they all should have known or they all didn't know. But also, after all of the mistakes that this police force is making, you would think that maybe they'd be a little gentler and not be
I know.
beaten up these people that they're arresting.
Literally.
Like, can
I
we
know.
just tread lightly? Because you've got it wrong like 30 times
Yeah.
already.
And now, like, Lightly and Jane don't know whether or not to believe if Goku's innocent, because Goku and Citizen were the ones that, like, got Odell to admit that he murdered, which obviously was a lie. The guy was just creepy as fuck and, like, obsessed with, like, had thoughts of murdering women, but it was kind of, like, brought up when they first bring the confession tape, and one of the cops is like, you're, you know, saying, like, Citizen's, like, leading the witness to, like, confess to the murder. So obviously, so now they just don't know who's innocent and who's not. There is an address left where Mistress was, so that's where, because then obviously Peter also kidnaps Mistress, because Mistress had reached out to Jane and to Peter and wanted to meet them together to confront him about what she found out in Oregon. And Peter beats Jane there, and so he just takes Mistress, brings her to the Flowers house, which was weird. So now we're back to the mom and the sister from before, but then apparently they live on, like, this big lot of land, and I guess it used to be, like, kind of like a farmland. And so there's this, I don't know, windmill type place that was where Mistress is, and Peter didn't necessarily harm her, but, like, he had her, like, zip tied and left, like, a water jug, which is still fucking terrible. And also she's, like, in her 60s, and you've had this, like, relationship with her for so long. So
yeah, this was disgusting.
Yeah.
And also the fact that they are all in this rental house together and they cannot keep track of each other.
No. Like,
they have one car. There's only so many places you could go. They're in the middle of Idaho.
Like, it was like, I'm telling you, the last, like, 20% of this book was just, it was
mayhem.
Wild West. Like, it was insane. So they're brought to the safe house. Goku ends up coming back innocent. He, like, says, like, I hadn't, but at first they, like, don't believe him about not knowing about Peter. And Goku's like, no, like, I swear, like, I didn't know. So, like,
well, because it's like, how could Peter have done this by himself? And also, what are the chances that they were so close and Goku didn't know anything or wasn't helping him or whatever?
Yeah. And basically what happens is, like, we finally find out that, yes, Peter did kill Bridget Howell. It wasn't intentional. He was just, apparently had a lot of aggression, and he just took it out on this girl because he accidentally killed her dog because he was roughhousing with the dog, which, okay. So he just kills Bridget Howell because she was going to tell someone that he killed her dog. After the first sorority murder, which was in fact done by Lizzie, but it's never actually, like, solved like that. They just kind of put everything on Peter. But Peter did do the second murder, and he did it because he was upset that Lightly left the group. So he specifically targeted a house that had a person of color because he knew that Lightly would come back. This is, like, actual insanity. And of course, Peter is a sociopath, and we know this. But to just literally murder innocent people when your current job is solving murders, like, make it make sense.
It's very gross.
Yeah, so he just kills girls, and just so he can get his high five,
get their little gang back together.
Chaos. But Peter escapes. He writes a letter to Jane and confesses that he, like, still loves her, which, okay. And he wants her help. And he wants, basically, her to send him information. And we don't quite know, like, what she ends up sending back. Because she says, I did send him something back, but we don't know what it is. And then the book ends with Jane going to Italy with her mom to spread her father's ashes in the sea. And then we find out that she sent Peter the safe house address, which is where Lizzie currently is. And Lizzie and Peter just kill each other. The end.
The end. They have a little standoff, and then both of them die.
Yeah. The end. So, yeah. That is the book.
I think I'm more confused than I was after I finished it.
Honestly. As I'm, like, reading through my notes, I'm like, wow, this book was actually unhinged.
Yeah, so much going on. And yeah, I do agree it was too long. But we got that full start to finish investigating that first crime.
Mm-hmm. Which I thought was cool. I actually really liked the beginning of the book. And I thought, I mean, obviously a lot of it was not super believable. But, you know, it was still very, like, well written and such a really interesting story.
It set it up perfectly.
Yeah, and I think that is what happens in these situations with internet sleuths. They get so obsessed with, like, a specific crime, and they'll literally do anything to try to, like, help solve a case. They mean well. But yeah, then once we get into, like, the meat of the book, it just kind of becomes a lot, like, too much. Like, information overload.
And there's just zero credibility.
Yeah.
It's to the point where it's so unbelievable. Because, like, yes, cops fumble a lot and fuck up a lot. But this is, like...
too much.
Yeah, like, just
too much.
Take their microphones away. Stop doing also, press conference.
Like, the cops aren't going to... One of the things that really I disliked, and that was still never fully resolved / like, open-ended, was in the first sorority murder, the one roommate that was left alive just kind of gets off scot-free. When she was there, when she says she saw someone in the house, she moves the body, contaminates a crime scene, and then just never talked about again. I'm like, okay. That's just not... She's not just gonna not be a suspect or have more of, like, a looking at.
And then after we find out that Peter is the killer, and the FBI and the cops find out, and then Lightly and Jane are like, oh, wait, but remember Lizzie? She's a killer too.
Yeah.
And the other FBI guy is like, listen, I got fired, okay? I'm not listening to you guys ever again.
And we got one guy, and we'll just kind of pin everything on him, and
it took us
closed.
like 5 tries, but we finally got one.
So I guess, I mean, and, you know, it is poetic justice at the end, because the first killer is, you know, taken care of, and Peter also perishes. But...
yeah, and he's also seems like the type of person who would never let himself be arrested.
No.
Like, he would kill himself
he would definitely never have, like, been caught. We had talked about this because we just had book club on this book over the weekend, and there was this part in the book where they're driving from Oregon back to Idaho, and they pass, like, a Navy base. And this is kind of, I think, where the Ashley Winstead was trying to make us as the reader think about maybe it being Peter. Because it's like this random, no need for it, but you would miss it if you weren't really, like, paying attention to, like, the characters' backgrounds. And because once I read that, and then I was, like, a little disappointed, because then it kind of did ruin, like, the ending for me a bit, because I did flag that, and I'm like, it's gonna end up being Peter. And, like, and then of course I'm, like, thinking, well, how is it Peter? Like, did he do, both murders, and did he kill the other girl? So I was a little disappointed that was kind of thrown in there, because I think I would have been more surprised if I didn't already have, like, that little nugget in my mind. So I wasn't, like, a...
Because there was a couple times that it was kind of hinted at that he was sketchy, at least.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
And it's like, I think that she did that knowing that she had the extra twist of there being 2 killers. Yeah. So she kind of, like, gave us a little.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't love that either.
Yeah. And I also didn't like the footnotes. I read it on my Kindle. How did you read it? On your Kindle as well?
Yeah.
So, you know, every time you, like, get to a point where there's, like, a little footnote, I have to click it to, like, see what it's about. And then it just takes you out of what you're currently reading, because the whole book is written from Jane's point of view as her book to the world, and in response to the book written about her. So, you know, there's that. But
Yeah,
no,
and then
the footnotes like really just took me out of the entire. It took me out multiple times, and some of them were long, and some of them were pointless. And I'm just
I think
okay.
it was just the format in general. Like, it could have been from her POV and not been a book that she's writing in response. Also, when you find out who she's responding to, it's like, you shouldn't be allowed to respond. You were wrong.
Oh, I know. So it is what it is. You know, and it's like she was grieving her dad, and this is just kind of like where her grief journey took her on this sleuthing journey.
Yeah, and we definitely talked about that at book club too, how it's framed that Jane's search for answers with her dad's death is kind of paralleled with this investigation, when really there's zero similarities. And it's fine that I like that she got into sleuthing because she was lost and because she was grieving.
Yeah, I agree.
But I didn't like the way that it was framed. Like, when something would happen in the case, she'd be like, this is just like what's happening in my investigation to my dad.
Yeah,
it's like,
she was
no,
trying.
It's not.
They were trying too hard, like you said, to make parallels when it wasn't remotely the same. Like, her dad literally just died of like medical issues.
A heart attack, literally.
These are murders. Like, her dad was not murdered. Like, yes, did he leave the family too soon? Of course he did. And it was very unexpected. But that's all there is to it.
It would have made a lot more sense if they were investigating a suicide or something, because she does have this whole idea that her dad basically basically ruined his health on purpose and like made the choice to not take his medicine, to not eat healthier, to not lose weight. And she felt that because he made those choices, he abandoned them. And we talked a lot about like the fat phobia in this book. There's a lot of it. Not just with the dad and talking about how, you know, his weight problems and that's why he died, and because he used to sneak food and sneak junk food and drink Yoo-hoo. I don't know the Yoo-hoo thing. That was something else. But anyway, and then a really good point that someone brought up at book club is that we get Jane's obsession with sleuthing, and it's framed in this, and her obsession with solving, you know, whatever happened to her dad. It's framed as this unhealthy obsession.
Yes.
Like, it, because, you know, she doesn't shower, she doesn't get out of bed, she doesn't...
Not eating properly.
She gets fired from her job, all this stuff. And she is a real bitch to her mother, who is also grieving. And so her obsession is definitely framed in this really unhealthy way. But her mom, who is also grieving, also has this obsession in her grief. She starts exercising, barely eating. She like develops an eating disorder, loses a bunch of weight.
Yeah.
And it's just, it was fascinating how her obsession was framed in a much more positive light. Even though, you know, it was still like, oh, this isn't healthy and she lost so much weight and blah, blah, blah. But it was in such a way to make it like more understanding for the reader. And as far as how fatness and eating disorders and image issues, body image issues, all this stuff is framed in our society, it's the same fucking thing. Yeah. What he did was so horrible, and he took himself away from his family because he couldn't control himself. Meanwhile, the mom is like, I'm going to make my life so much better and blah, 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 because I'm going to be so skinny. And it's just, it's sending out such a horrible, horrible message.
It does. It does. And it's just kind of frustrating that like fat phobia has to show up so often in books. And like, you know, it's such still a stigma in society, and it's like ridiculous. It's so ridiculous.
Literally had nothing to do with anything.
Nothing to do with the book. Nothing.
Like, it could have been he could have died from something else.
Yeah.
Or he could have died from a heart problem that had nothing to do with his weight.
Exactly. She's
or
just
his
like
eating habits.
The author just makes the mother just like obsessed with the fact that she thought her husband was unhealthy.
And that like, she tried to help him and he resented her for it and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And the fact that Ashley Winstead is a thin, blonde, white woman, it makes it feel even ickier.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I don't think she did any of this purposely at all. Of course not.
No, and I don't think so either. But it's just, this is why it's interesting to like hear other people's perspectives and thoughts on books and like what stuck out to them, because something that stuck out to you might not have necessarily stuck out to me and vice versa, or we saw the same similarities and but other people, it really opens up a space to like converse about the things that we didn't love. Yeah. Which is what we always do. And
and on the surface, it's a fun thriller. It's a hot mess, but we love that in a thriller.
Yeah, like I didn't hate it. Like I'm not going to say that I disliked it, but I definitely liked her the only other book. I know you love her, The Last Housewife, you said was like your favorite. So I haven't read that one yet, but I don't think that this was by any means a bad book. I just think that it was kind of underwhelming in a sense and way too long.
Yeah. And I think because it was so long, that's why we have all of this extra fuel to kind of dive into all this other stuff.
Yeah.
Because it did go on and on about her dad and why he died. And it went on and on about X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
When it could have just kind of...
I know, because then I feel like the ending was rushed. I feel like out of nowhere now we're like, it's just kind of like a tsunami and it's just all of a sudden we're done. Like there were so many moments in the book that in the ending specifically that I wanted more of, that I think should have been more detailed.
And we were trying to figure out when we were talking about it at book club, like, how much of what Peter said was a lie? How much of it was the truth? Did he really work on the Navy base? Did he really this, that, and the third? And it's like, we have no idea. There was just so many plot holes that we didn't get answers to.
No, like literally, like I hate, like one thing that just stuck out to me was the whole point that, I thought the part in Oregon. Is it Oregon? What? Oregon?
It's like tomato, I think.
When George and Jane went there and they finally discover all the stuff about Peter, I thought that was like beautifully done. But then all of a sudden we have this moment where, okay, we're going to go back to this Airbnb, which not smart. Like you don't know what could happen. And then we have like a little sliver of that. And then all of a sudden it's an FBI raid. And then all of a sudden they're in a safe house and everyone's family's there. And it's just like, we got certain moments that were really, really well detailed and finished. And then things that were just very like messy and not really tied nice together with a bow. So that was like disappointing.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I was going to talk more shit about this police force, but honestly, we know. We know. Jesus Christ.
Yeah, anyways. Was there anything else that I didn't touch on? Because there was like a lot. Like there was a lot of like side shit that we didn't even get into because that doesn't even necessarily pertain to anything. And it was also some of it was like unwarranted and not needed. Like there was like
a loose end.
Yeah, like the cool thing was that like her dad wrote like Star Trek fanfic. Like that was fun. But there was just
also unnecessary.
Yeah, like there was a lot of unnecessary plot points that, as I agree, were never really fully resolved or brought up ever again.
Like the college and her best friend at college. But anyway, I do want to say that at book club, our new book club member asked an interesting question.
I don't remember because my brain
whether Jane is a good person.
Oh, I know.
And I've decided she's not.
After you've ruminated on it.
After I ruminated on it for a full day, I decided that she's not because Let me tell you why, Heather. Because, well, I want to say that the fact that she led Peter to Lizzie does not make her a bad person. I liked that.
Yeah. That was a badass
What makes her a bad
moment.
person is that she has no morals.
Yeah.
No lines of ethics. She goes into this grieving mother's house. She tramples all over the first investigation. She dives headfirst, doesn't think before she does anything.
And somehow, like, comes out the hero.
100%.
Or the
and,
victor.
Like, well-respected.
Yeah, and it's like, it sucks for the people that have been doing it for so long and aren't getting any recognition. Just to have, like, this 22-year-old girl just stomp over
shit all over it. And she treats her mom like complete trash.
Oh, yeah.
Her mom is grieving.
Which, like, her mom doesn't seem like the greatest person either, but still a modicum of respect.
And the fact that your mom is grieving over the loss of her husband, she literally found him, and she has this whole breakdown where she's like, oh, if I had gone in earlier, maybe I could have saved him, or blah, blah, blah. Like, she has all this guilt around him dying. And Jane is just so self-centered that she's like, well, Mom, I don't care that you're trying to grieve. You can't throw all his stuff out. And then she just dips, leaves for Idaho, no return ticket, and is just like, see you never.
Yeah.
Anyway. So Jane's not a killer, but
not great.
Yeah. Everyone's got pros and cons, right? Peter didn't rape. He murdered, but he didn't rape.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Oh, man. That is what society does for us now. Whew.
The bar is in hell. Okay, I'm sorry.
Shall we rate?
Let's do it.
Well, all right. So our rating system is out of Yoo-Hoo drinks.
Out of Yoo-Hoo drinks. Good one.
Which we didn't talk much about.
Because it's irrelevant, Heather.
But if you read the book, if you know, you know, is all I'll say.
There you go.
What did you rate?
If you didn't read the book, God, you're going to be so confused about this whole thing.
But also, read the book. Just skim.
Yeah, also read the book.
Skim it, though. Until you get to the end.
Skip all the Star Trek stuff. That's what I did. I gave this 4 Yoo-Hoos. I know that that's surprising because I just ripped it apart.
Which is what we do.
Completely ripped it to shreds. I thought it was very entertaining. Yeah. I thought it was just an overall good thriller. Like, I would recommend this for people to read, especially people who don't read a lot of thrillers.
That's a good point, because I think this is actually a good segue into that specific part of true crime. For people who don't maybe have any interest in true crime, this is a great starter book for that, due to all of the minutia that she has put into this book about sleuthing. And maybe that's also why we didn't resonate with it as much, because we already knew all this, being true crime fans. So that might have also been why we also thought it was too long, because this is stuff that we already know about, you know?
Yeah, and I do think this is great for people who don't read as many thrillers and love true crime. Yes. Like, it totally gives the vibes of watching a documentary
100%.
with the internet sleuths and all that stuff. And also, like, there are a lot of different dynamics, like the pros and cons of internet sleuths, and just there's a lot to dive into if you dive into it. But I still think she's a great writer. I think, you know, it definitely had some issues. It had some holes, but I still like her character development.
Yeah.
And I felt like all of the characters were very developed and well-rounded. She threw in a couple extra traits that I didn't need, like that Goku was like an incel, but
I know,
just never gets brought up.
That's what I'm saying. A lot of random stuff strewn throughout this book that just never gets revisited.
Now I'm just talking shit in my rating. Listen, Ashley Winstead, I love you. Good job.
No, really, honestly, I can't wait to read her books that she's written that I haven't read yet, and her future books. You know, it's like, I didn't hate it. I gave it a 3.5, but I didn't hate it. You know, I'm just like disappointed that the ending was so rushed, because I feel like it was such a strong ending realistically, and a lot more could have been done. But I think there was just too much time placed on the minutia of the sleuthing and the true crime forums and all of that, that when it finally came time to reveal the big mystery, it was kind of, like I said before, like underwhelming.
Mm-hmm. I will say though, if it didn't have that ending of her giving the address,
yes,
I definitely would have dropped my rating to like 3.5.
Yeah.
I thought that was so unexpected and the only way to tie up the Lizzie loose end.
Mm-hmm.
And it kind of felt like a movie moment. You know what I mean? Like the last
again,
clincher.
like that was a really fun way to like end the book.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, it's like the poetic justice of
Mm-hmm.
these two people, these two murderers just taking each other out. And like, okay, we have now erased two people from this world that should not be in it. So good on you guys.
Now this police force can be forced to retire quietly, and we never have to hear from them again.
Exactly. So yeah, I mean, didn't hate it, didn't love it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's where I'm at.
I agree.
All right. Anything else?
No.
Okay.
Always, but absolutely not. You know?
This episode is brought to you by us ripping apart books that we love.
We kind of did the same. Definitely not as hard, but in My Dreams I Hold a Knife, we were
I know.
what the fuck was wrong with that ending? And then we're like, also, we loved it. Thank you so much.
I think I gave that one 4.5 stars, if I recall correctly.
Yeah,
So
I think I gave it 5.
Yeah, so it's fine. It's fine. That's all I'm going to say. All right. That's all we have for you today. If you like what you heard, please make sure to follow, subscribe, and rate and review the podcast on whatever platform you listen to us on. If you have any book recommendations or questions for us, you can email us at fullybookedcalfpod@gmail.com. Also, be sure to follow us on TikTok and Instagram at fullybookedcalfpod to see our upcoming reads. Thanks for checking us out. And remember,
if you need us, we're fully booked.
bye.
Bye.